right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at the Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. Well, we got another NBA trade last night as the Boston Celtics made their first big shakeup of the summer, sending Jrue Holiday to the Portland Trail Blazers for an exciting young lead guard and Anfernee Simons, as well as 2 second-round picks. We're going to be breaking that trade down from the perspective of both teams. Then Jackson's going to come on the show. He's a big Celtics fan, and he's going to give his take. We'll go back and forth about it for a little bit, and then we'll get out of here. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing great work on our social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us there. And last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments, and we'll keep getting to them throughout the remainder of the year. All right, let's talk some basketball. So, in the deal, the Portland Trail Blazers get Jrue Holiday, and the Boston Celtics get Anfernee Simons, as well as 2 second-round picks. So, Boston turns an older veteran role player into a younger lead guard. We all know who Jrue Holiday is and what he's capable of, and in the context of the current iteration of the Celtics, when fully healthy, he brings a ton of value and utility, right? But the second that Jayson Tatum went down, the way that he did, it officially made all the sense in the world to look to move Jrue Holiday for something more useful in the long run. My initial gut reaction when I saw the trade was, wow, like this is going to be fun. This instantly makes the Boston Celtics next year interesting in a way that they wouldn't have been if they would have made moves more in line with bringing in draft compensation or more theoretical talent. This is more of like in 1 year, we're going to find out really quickly how well Anfernee Simons, because Anfernee's right at the beginning of what you would consider to be the prime of his career in his mid-20s, right? You're going to get to see really quickly how well he fits in the Boston system, in the Joe Mazzulla driving kick system. It's a perfect test of a theory. We haven't seen a lead guard in this system. That's not to say that Jrue or Derrick couldn't play with the ball in their hands. Derrick White obviously ran a ton of action with Jayson Tatum, is an excellent pull-up three-point shooter, a very good passer out of ball screens. But he doesn't really bring like all of the wiggle and downhill force that you get from Anfernee Simons, right? Jrue Holiday plays with a lot of power, does bring some downhill force, certainly can hit higher difficulty shots in ball screens and things like that, but he doesn't have the level of just wiggle and pull-up shooting and stuff that Anfernee Simons has. Anfernee brings a combination of downhill burst, shifty ball handling, and pull-up shooting that neither of those guys had. So before we get to any of the specifics of Anfernee's game, I'm just excited to see this tweak in Joe Mazzulla's drive and kick system. Anfernee brings a very different style even than what Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum did. So in a year where Tatum is unavailable, where the Celtics don't have championship expectations, they can evaluate what it looks like to see this type of guard play in their system of matchup hunting, drive and kick basketball, modern four-out spacing, big spacing above the break, all of those specific characteristics. Immediately makes the Celtics a very interesting watch next year. So a quick description of Anfernee's game for those of you guys who haven't watched much of him over the years. He obviously spent the entire beginning of his career alongside Damian Lillard. This is something that stood out to me throughout watching a young Anfernee in Portland. He plays aesthetically a very similar style to Dame. He's a bigger, more upright player. He doesn't have the overall level of first step quickness and athleticism that Dame had, but you can tell that they did a lot of workouts together. You can tell that Anfernee idolized Dame, and by the way, he picked a great player to idolize. He's got a very quick and compact jump shot release that he can get to out of all of the same kind of footwork stuff that Dame uses, like hard pound dribble in and out to the right, step backs going to the left, step backs going both directions, the mid-range pull-ups. He's got all of the same kind of like footwork and off the dribble jump shooting combinations that Damian Lillard had. Again, not to the same level of efficiency, but at least in terms of the aesthetics and the way that he gets to his shots, very similar. Out of hesitation dribbles, out of dribble combinations, from three and from the mid-range. It's like watching a taller Dame. It's legitimately crazy how similar their jump shot form and some of their body movements are. He has all of the shot making you need in pick and roll, pull up twos, pull up threes, floaters. He can get to the rim. He can make basic passing reads in pick and roll. He's not some surgical playmaker by any stretch of the imagination, but he can make the reads that you need to run an NBA offense. His weakness, and this is in all likelihood why Portland is moving on from him. Hotels in Vegas may be booked solid this weekend, but there's one vacancy left to be filled at UFC 317. A new lightweight champ will be crowned. Grab your own crown at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC. Topuria takes on Oliveira to fill a vacant men's lightweight title, and Alexandre Pantoja defends his flyweight belt against Kai Kara-France in the co-main event. Who are you taking? First time betting on UFC at DraftKings? Just pick something simple like a fighter to win and make your pick. It's that easy. And if you're new to DraftKings, check this out. New customers who bet $5 will get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Is that he isn't particularly great at any of those specific things within the lead guard archetype. Like, he's a good three-point shooter off the catch, but he's not a great three-point shooter off the catch. He's a decent pull-up shooter, 47% on pull-up twos last year, 35% on pull-up threes. It's also worth mentioning he did go down year over year as a shooter, but the previous year he spent the majority of the year playing alongside Damian Lillard, catching lesser perimeter defenders. So I do think that those two things are related in a lot of ways. But again, he's a good pull-up shooter. He actually got up over a point per shot, but he's not like some deadly efficient pull-up shooter like you see at the top guys in the league, right? He's okay on floaters. He's 40%. But that's not the super high-level floater shooter that you see around the league. Guys like Ty Jerome, Tyrese Halliburton that are shooting over 50% on floaters. He's a decent driver of the basketball. He's particularly good at beating slower-footed bigs and switches, which I think will be uniquely valuable in Boston's system. But he's not an elite driver of the basketball that like shreds defenses. He logs about 9 drives per game. For perspective, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 21. Brunson, 18. Trae Young, 17. He's just not a great driver of the basketball the way that those guys are. He's a decent passer out of pick and roll and ISO, but he's not a super high-level playmaker. And then he's got a couple of areas where he's kind of weak, right? He's very poor finisher at the rim, just 54% overall, just 52% on layups. He does have a little bit more vertical pop than you'd probably think, and he'll occasionally get up and throw one down, but that's not, rim finishing is not a strength of his, and he is not a good defensive player. Although he did average a career high in steals last year, the Portland Trailblazers, towards the tail end of the season, took on more of a defensive identity, behind guys like Tamani Kamara, Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle. By the way, Jrue Holiday is going to be very interesting in that regard if they do decide to keep him. And Anfernee did force more turnovers within that context, but that's not exactly what you would consider to be a strength for him. The reason why I like this move for Boston has to do with their culture, has to do with the brand of basketball that they're playing. Anfernee's flaws, all those things that I just went over, are what made him inexpensive to get in a trade. He's due an extension soon. Obviously, whether or not that extension meets a certain threshold is going to be a big part of whether or not this makes sense for Boston, but they could also turn around and flip him. If he goes in there this year and you set him up properly in the Boston system and it just continues to be underwhelming, they can turn around and flip him. They can turn around and move him in a different direction. And so obviously there's a forward-thinking element to this in terms of asset management. Do they retain him? If they do, what do they retain him on in terms of an extension? If they move him, what do they get in return? That is going to be the kind of like swing factor in this deal. But, that's on Brad Stevens to figure out. In the short term, you gave yourself an opportunity to see what Anfernee Simons looks like in this system. Boston is one of the best teams in the league at creating space for drivers of the basketball. Some of the little things that they do in terms of like spacing bigs above the break to create different sort of help defense situations. So instead of there being a big waiting at the rim, the big is out dealing with Porzingis or Horford above the break, and now you have a small guard, someone like a Derrick White, someone like a Peyton Pritchard, someone like a Sam Hauser, sometimes drifting into the dunker spot so that the help defender, the guy guarding that guy, is a smaller player that's contesting at the rim. They move without the ball. They're constantly cycling through. There's a lot of things that Boston does to create really open areas on the floor for guys like Anfernee to go to work. Now, obviously, it remains to be seen whether or not some of those guys get moved. So, like if they don't bring Horford back and then they trade Porzingis, then yeah, it's going to potentially have an impact on their spacing. But even in that context, dating back to 2022 when they were playing some of these non-shooting bigs like Robert Williams, they are capable of generating space. And I think that that's a very interesting spot for Anfernee to be in. He's also going to be surrounded with more like dribble, shoot, pass talent than he was surrounded by in Portland. He's going to be in lineups where Jaylen Brown's on the floor, where Derrick White's on the floor, where Hauser's on the floor, where Pritchard's on the floor, where Baylor Shireman's on the floor. He's going to be in situations where he is getting the ball in advantages and he's creating advantages for his teammates in that drive and kick system. It's an awesome opportunity for us to see just a different guy. Now, like we talked about, because their guards weren't this type of guard, and because Tatum and Brown are these big matchup attacking forwards that, as we've talked about over the years, can sometimes settle for jump shots and struggle to beat their man at the point of attack, I'm interested to see if this Boston offense is a bit more resilient with more of a lead guard that they can go to get dribble penetration to start the engine when things get kind of stagnant. Anfernee gets up into that high hesitation dribble, and he will pressure those gaps and he will get into the teeth of the defense. And so there is a different look there that I think will be really interesting. I like the move. It makes Boston a more interesting watch this year. It's kind of like an opportunity to get a different look at the Celtics offense with a different archetype of player. And then one of two things will happen. Either Brad Stevens will move him for asset return to help Tatum and Brown when Tatum gets back from his injury, or it'll be like, oh shit, this works. Now let's talk about what we're going to look like in the future in a system that involves both Anfernee Simons and Jayson Tatum and potentially Jaylen Brown as well. It is an awesome opportunity to run an experiment and see what this player looks like in the most advanced drive and kick system that we have in the NBA right now. I'm very, very excited to watch it. On the Portland front, I would assume this is about opening up some ball handling responsibility, about opening up a starting spot. Scoot Henderson has done a lot of coming off the bench since he's been drafted. This is a situation that should open up more lead ball handling responsibility for him, more ball handling opportunities for guys like Denny Avdia, who showed some off the dribble pop towards the tail end of the season. I'm just wondering whether or not they have any plans to actually use Jrue Holiday in the short term, or if they intend to flip him. I feel like Jrue is most valuable on a roster that is championship capable, where he can push a team over the top, and that's not really what Portland is. But there is kind of this growing feisty defensive attitude that Portland took on towards the second half of the season or so, as they started to rack up a few more impressive wins than usual. A couple of those like 2-week streaks where you're like, oh man, Portland's beating some people. This is interesting, right? Like Toumani Camara coming around is one of the better young wing defenders in the league. Robert Williams, when he's healthy, is still a very, really impactful switching big and rim protecting big. Matisse Thybulle has been one of the better defensive wings in the league for a long time. Jrue Holiday should fit into that context extremely well in terms of helping them. It just doesn't help them get to what their ultimate goals are. And so that's why, I kind of would have preferred to see Jrue go to more of a contending team, but it'll be an interesting kind of influx of defensive culture for that roster. All right, Jackson. So you've had about a little over 12 hours to think about this deal. As a Celtics fan, where are you at with Anfernee Simons becoming a Celtic? What's up, guys? I wanted to take a few minutes today to talk to you guys about Ridge Wallet. I've had a very frustrating experience with wallets over the years because, one, you got to carry your cards, but you also end up needing to carry some cash. And in order to do that, it ends up being too big and bulky to carry around all day. And one of the things that I really like about Ridge Wallet is it's really small and low profile. As you can see, it's just the size of one of your credit cards. It's really easy to get your cards out. A lot of times you get wallets like this and you can't get into the cards that you need to get when you need them. There's a little slot for you to just push everything out to get to them when you need them. And then this little band here on the side that you can hold cash. My old wallet, it was crazy. I used to literally have to jam the cash in, and it looked like I was carrying around a giant T in my wallet every day when I was trying to get to cash out of my wallet. This is a much more efficient design that allows me to easily get to my cash, easily get to my cards. It blocks RFID. And for a limited time, Ridge is having a crazy sale. Get up to 40% off your order by going to ridge.com/hoops tonight. With over 50 colors and styles, I really like this green that I got. Ridge Wallet isn't just functional, it's personal. Whether you want sleek, black forged carbon fiber, a wallet that features your favorite NFL team, or one that just matches your vibe, they've got you covered. Losing your wallet is the worst, but with Ridge AirTag attachment, you'll always know exactly where it is before panic mode kicks in. Right now, just in time for Father's Day, Ridge is having a huge sale. Get up to 40% off your order at ridge.com/hoops tonight. Just head to ridge.com/hoops tonight to find the perfect gift for dad or yourself. And when you check out, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Give dad the upgrade he deserves this year.
I like it. I mean, I think it's a really fun flyer. There's they haven't had a player like this in a while. We'll see what else they do this summer. I don't think this is the last move for the Celtics this summer, but it certainly is a fun bridge option where if it really hits in a way that maybe even higher than I'm expecting, then all of a sudden in an East with all these injuries, like maybe the Celtics are actually way more competitive than we may have thought after the Tatum injury. And if it doesn't hit, then it's like, okay, that's kind of what we were expecting anyways. It's sort of this sort of middle to middle down year for Boston. The contract situation has some upsides and has some downsides. I mean, the fact that it's expiring makes definitely a tradable piece potentially at the deadline if he's playing well and the Celtics don't want to be competitive or don't want to be as competitive. If he really plays well, though, I would be curious what number they're comfortable extending him at. Like if it really hits, which they're going to need offense. And so it's certainly possible that he averages 24 points a game or something like that. I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility. And if that happens, I'm not sure what number you're comfortable signing him at, considering he's not a plus defensive player. And Missoula ball, while it's sort of most people think about it offensively, and it is, it's also a lot of we want all of our players to be two-way players. You know what I mean? So that's the one of the question marks, I think. But overall, just zooming out, I really like it for Boston. I think it's a little weird for Portland, but they want to be a great defensive team, and this is going to help with that. So I get that.
Yeah, the big key is going to be just how good he is right away. Like,
yeah.
is this an underutilized lead guard playing in clunky spacing on a defensive minded set of role player core for kind of an inexperienced, relatively new head coach that hasn't had any success yet in the NBA? Like, is that what's going on here, or is Anfernee Simons just not that level of guard? And we are going to find out. I feel like in that Eastern Conference, which is pretty open, and alongside that group, like again, like they're going to make some moves this year, but like you can count on Cornette being there. You can count on Jaylen Brown being there, most likely Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Derrick White. Like they're going to be still a good core of Celtics role players around him.
Yeah.
In a system where these dudes have been playing this style for a long time. And like, to me, I think the indicator will be like the scoring plus the efficiency. Like if they're sitting at the All-Star break and he's at like 62% true shooting,
right,
because he's been hitting 40% of his pull-up threes, and like his drives have gone up from 9 to like 13 per game because they're just creating more space, and all of a sudden like it's just coming together in a way that is where I think you start to look at it like, oh, we are actualizing this player.
for sure.
And now he makes sense in this context. And I think, honestly, to your point about the East being open, that might literally be the best case scenario if you could get like 2 playoff rounds out of Anfernee and kind of see him in that setting.
Right.
I in that context, I think that could be super interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's immediately the second most skilled offensive player on the roster. I mean, I like Derrick White a lot, but his overall value is in part because he's a two-way player. I think Anfernee Simons is immediately the second best offensive player. And that's a little strange. Like it's a unique context to go into a team that was so, it felt like perfectly built, and now you have to just retool obviously after the Tatum injury. But I think this is as good of a pivot as you could make consider in the short term. It's not what I was expecting in a Jrue Holiday deal. I'm going to say that. I was expecting a Dallas Mavericks get a first round, hopefully get a first, like there was some mixed reporting whether it was going to be the Celtics needed to give up assets to get off of that contract, or is the value good enough where you can get assets back? It was sort of mixed reporting in that sense. I wasn't really sure what his value was. And I was definitely not expecting a young player in return. I was expecting picks really. Or a young player like a young player who's developed enough at this point. Maybe it would have been a young flyer or something, but I think it's fun, and I think that you could talk yourself into a lot of different outcomes considering how unstable unstable the East feels right now.
The usage piece is the interesting part. Like to your point, I thought that we would see a couple of different types of moves from Boston this year in terms of bringing in younger role player talent, draft compensation, things that would allow Brad to effectively pivot around Tatum and Brown next year. That's what I was expecting too. And like it's just that's what I meant when I said like, oh, Boston became so much more interesting. Anfernee can come in and be high usage. Like
Yeah.
I'm not now whether or not it ends up being consistent will be the key.
Right.
But like you will have games next year where Anfernee drops 35 and lights the TD Garden on fire, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, look at like he will have awesome, high-scoring, massive games." Like he had that famous game winner driving past Russell Westbrook this year against Denver. Like he is a guy that has real upside.
Yeah.
It hasn't come to fruition over the course of his career, but I kind of like this. Like Bill Simmons used to talk about this on his show all the time, and it's kind of an interesting concept. It's like lottery flyers. So like people who were picked in the lottery that struggled in their first destination that maybe you just think, oh, we get him into a new kind of setting, and this is a guy with some real pedigree, with some real talent. Maybe we can get it out of him. This is kind of like a different version of that. It's more like in that after that second contract where it's like he's much more established, but it's a similar idea where it's like we've only seen this guy in one construct. It's generally been a losing construct the entire time he's been there. We've seen him on super offensive minded rosters where he's put up big numbers, but they can't win. Now we've seen him on defensive minded rosters where his efficiency tanks, but like they were, over 500 there for a big chunk of the season. So like it's kind of, it's just an experiment. It's an experiment. And like in terms of the compensation piece, to your point, like Jrue Holiday was going to get you something. He wasn't going to get you a haul.
No.
You weren't going to get 3 firsts or like a really, really good, interesting young player. Like to turn Jrue Holiday, an expensive older veteran player, into a mid-20s dude that you can decide what you want to do with next, to me is like a really smart pivot that makes you more interesting. And it's like a legitimate opportunity to like experiment for Boston's future. Because again, they were going to need to pivot. They weren't going to be able to just bring everybody back next year. Right. Horford would have been too old. Porzingis would have been too old. Jrue Holiday would have been too old. You've got to start experimenting with this right now.
Yeah, 100%. So I think in that context, it definitely makes sense. And also being able to get, not that I'm banging the drum for the value of second round picks or anything, but Portland is trying to be competitive. The West is loaded. I would frankly be surprised if they even made the play in. Maybe they sneak into a 9 or 10 spot. So if they miss the playoffs, that second round pick could be pick 38 or something, which is not, crazy valuable, but you get 2 of them from Portland, which are decent dart throws or decent little asset, fillers you could throw into other deals. So overall, I think value wise, I'm happy with it. I think it's a way to make the team a lot more. I was really kind of expecting a complete sort of dump of a year, like a punt of a year. And it's definitely not going to be that. With a move like this, you're certainly not saying we're punting on the season. You're trying to let's see if we can be fun and competitive, especially in a down East.
And Jaylen Brown is going to be attacking this offseason, preparing for his first full season as a lead ball handler. Jaylen Brown's going to come in great shape. He's going to dictate most likely the best perimeter defender on most nights, which will help put Anfernee back into a situation like he was in with Dame. There's a lot of like inverted stuff he can do with Jaylen. I'm just excited. I'm excited for the opening week and like seeing what the Celtics team looks like. And I
Yeah,
just didn't think that was going to be the case when
me
Tatum
too.
went down into
They
heat the way
don't.
that he did.
It'll be really weird. I still have no idea. But, you know, they got a lot of moves to make. I think what the front court is going to look like. No idea what the front court is going to look like. But Derrick White, Anfernee Simons, and Jaylen Brown is a very fun sort of trio going into next season. I think from a backcourt wing standpoint.
Totally agree. Totally agree. All right, guys, that's all we have for today. As always, we sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting us and supporting the show. If you didn't see it, we did drop like an hour and a half of draft content with Sam Vecini this morning. You guys can find that a little bit further back on our feeds. We will be back tomorrow night live during the NBA draft. We'll have some information on Twitter today about exactly when we're doing that. I'll keep you guys posted, but it's going to be basically right after the lottery. We'll do our draft reaction, and then we're also going to have some mailbag stuff later in the week. It's going to be a fun week of content. We appreciate you guys for supporting us. We will see you tomorrow.